Hello to everyone. Happy Sunday, February 8th evening at 10:38 p.m. I am beaming in this evening to talk about something that I wouldn't have thought I'd be talking about because I am not a sports person. I will start out by saying I'm not a sports person. I'm not a person who really tends to watch the Super Bowl. I don't know if I've ever watched a Super Bowl. I don't know if I'm sure at some point I've gone to a Super Bowl party and then probably spent the whole time eating and talking to people. Not a sports person. I grew up in a family that they were baseball fans. We cheered for the Yankees, my brothers, my father, my grandfather. But generally speaking, not a big sports person. And I didn't really watch the Super Bowl today. However, I did watch halftime. And so I want to offer a few comments about the drama that played out, not really on the Super Bowl, not really at halftime, but kind of surrounding it. So first, some background. There was a controversy raised because the halftime featured performer in the Super Bowl was Bad Bunny, who sings in Spanish. And as one can imagine, this caused an uproar. Also at the Grammys, he made a political statement about how we're not savages, abolish ICE. Okay, so you put those two things together, and you can imagine there were some people who were very upset about this. Now, they were upset before the Grammys because apparently it was last October, maybe September, when they begin deciding who is going to be the performer at halftime at the Super Bowl. So the choice of Bad Bunny was controversial. Oh my gosh. Singing in Spanish, not politically correct for some people. And you got to know, some people said he's not really American. Puerto Rico is part of America. I don't know how many times people need to say that. There have been other halftime performers, apparently, who were not American. I don't know, Paul McCartney, apparently, one of them. So the question of whether the person at halftime is or isn't American, number one, means nothing. It's meant nothing in the past. And number two, was a moot point. He's American. And the fact that people didn't know that, well, that says a lot about them too, doesn't it? But that was the plan. And exactly. Frida says a few years ago they had Shakira. Right. There have been, I saw somewhere online a list of all of the people who performed at halftime who were not American citizens. So shock of all shocks, non-issue. At any rate, so that was controversial. And a response to that was Turning Point USA, the conservative organization, Turning Point USA, focused on universities, among other things. They decided they were going to have a counter halftime show called, I think, the All-American Halftime or some such thing like that, which featuring, among others, Kid Rock. That's who they've got going for them in the realm of rock. Kid Rock, who's almost as old as me. Kid Rock. And then a few country singers. Apparently, it was supposed to air on X. This tells you about X. And then couldn't because of licensing reasons or something. So it was aired on, I guess, Turning Point USA's YouTube channel. I'm going to come back to that point momentarily too. But at any rate, so this is a thing. It became sort of a weird cultural political showdown. But here's what's interesting. So the Turning Point USA people said they wanted to have an all-American halftime show with no agenda. That is what they said. Now, allow me to say it was dedicated to Charlie Kirk, who was one of the founders of Turning Point USA, dedicated to Charlie Kirk, and was, according to them, a celebration of family, freedom, faith. That's what it was going to be. When supposedly the organization asked people what they would prefer to have on their All-American halftime show, and people said, among other things, anything in English. This moment, folks, anyway. So, you know, and they declared themselves, quote unquote, the real America. This is the real America. So, right, no agenda, Turning Point USA, yay Charlie Kirk, anything in English, faith, family, freedom. Meanwhile, someone says, has anyone heard Kid Rock's lyrics? I know nothing about his lyrics, so I can't even say, but I gather that's controversial all by itself. But at any rate, meanwhile, the halftime show in the Super Bowl, the real halftime show with Bad Bunny was, and again, I'm not a Super Bowl person, but I thought it was pretty off the charts because it was joyful. It was ambitious. It did make some political statements, but in a not necessarily hammer it over your head way. And some of the political statements it made, I already saw someone flitting by in the comments that at the end he said, "God bless America," and then listed all of the Latin American countries, and then said, "This is America, God bless America," with all the flags from all these countries. And then said, maybe as he left the field, I think he said, "The only thing stronger than hate is love." Okay, so I suppose if having someone perform in Spanish means that there's an agenda, that's what some people are saying. Promoting love above hate, depending on who you are and what you appear to be favoring these days, maybe that feels political to you. I gather that the song, so Ricky Martin and Lady Gaga also were featured. I gather that the song that Ricky Martin sang was about preserving Puerto Rican culture and not letting probably America do to Puerto Rico what they did to Hawaii, meaning to sort of erase it. So obviously a political statement. So I'm not saying it was not political at all, but and also I should say at one point there were power poles, electric poles that sprang up, a reminder of how the United States really didn't do a lot to help Puerto Rico when the power went down and the grid was down and people were living there without power. So it's not as though there were not any statements at all. But generally speaking, it was a celebration of Puerto Rican culture, all kinds of forms of Puerto Rican culture. And that's what it was. And so I know promoting love, says Larry Duggar, shock, it's shocking. So, I wanted to watch it because I wanted to watch it because I said this on social media, right? I'm not so old that I don't know who Bad Bunny is, and I want to see halftime. But I thought it was really good, and particularly because it was joyful and earnest and honest and not coded in any way. It was just joyful about culture, Puerto Rican culture, and then just generally Puerto Rico and the United States generally. The fact that it ended by making this strong statement, this is America. So yes, inclusive, joyful, grounded on love, right? Not the message we're really getting from the folks who like ICE. So in this climate, I suppose that makes it political and gives it a political agenda, because it's not saying, yay, attack people of color, throw them into warehouses, hate, hate, hate. So at any rate, but the point I wanted to make that's striking is that, and while I'm acknowledging that there were political references of sorts in the real halftime show, they were gentle, and they did not compare with the we want a show that's in English, we want a show that represents the real America, and it's dedicated to Charlie Kirk. And those people were saying, our show has no agenda. So and yes, someone is saying Trump posted a hateful message right after. I know he did, and I'm actually not going to quote it because he gets entirely too much attention. So I'm not going to. It's not hardly surprising that he did that. That's what he does. I wanted to point out the mirror house world that emerges from this halftime conflict, where you have Turning Point USA saying, we want a halftime show without an agenda. Come to ours, dedicated to Charlie Kirk. No agenda? Really? Like, that's the no agenda? So, in part, it should be a reminder, not that we need reminding of this, but it was so laugh in your face bonkers for them to say ours has no agenda, theirs does, and then do what they did. The funhouse mirror sort of mode of the quote unquote real halftime show, and very often the sort of MAGA statements about many things, is that they say their rhetoric says sometimes the precise opposite of what's actually happening, right? And sometimes it's projection. Some people are masters of projection, where they blame constantly people on the left for doing things that actually people on the right do pretty consistently, right? They're all paid protesters on the left. And apparently that actually happens on the right. And as far as I know, not happening on the left. So in part, I thought this whole controversy, it's worth noting the degree to which the rhetoric and the reality do not line up. And that's not a new idea, but the sort of blatant ours will have no agenda, laughable statement from Turning Point USA, just a reminder for all of us to not just buy the rhetoric. The rhetoric is for impact. The rhetoric often is to intimidate, and the rhetoric is to suggest how big and all-powerful the regime is. But as I've said many times here, the rhetoric is not necessarily the realities. As a matter of fact, more often than not, it's not the reality. And that is not to say that violent, horrible things aren't happening in cities throughout the United States because of ICE and the ways in which the regime is empowering it and encouraging it. All of that is true. But they're spinning a narrative about how strong they are and how they represent the real America, and how people who don't agree with them are not real Americans, and how they don't have any agenda. They're real America, but anyone who doesn't agree with them has an agenda and isn't the real America. That is their narrative. It's important to them, for us, to buy that narrative. Don't buy the narrative, right? And I don't just mean don't believe it. I mean, never swallow the rhetoric without considering the reality. Don't do it, right? And this is often true, generally speaking of political rhetoric. Why you got to think about political rhetoric, because political rhetoric generally speaking, has an aim. I talk about this sometimes with my undergrads in my seminars, which are filled with political writing, political rhetoric, political statements. And students will often say, how do I know what to believe? Which is a really good question. And we talk about thinking about the situation and why the person is writing it and who the intended audience is and all of the questions you can ask in which, and the answers help you understand what the writer or speaker is trying to do. So to me, part of this message was, or the one of the lessons, put it that way, of the halftime drama conflict is just don't buy the rhetoric without really seriously considering the actual reality. And just out in the world, we Turning Point USA are not going to have a political agenda is a crazy statement. I'm sorry. it's an inherently really political organization that founded by Charlie Kirk. It's conservative. It has a political agenda. It's a political organization, even though it could say it's more about culture and reaching young people and all of the things it is. It's political. Okay, many organizations, left and right, are political. But for that organization to say, we're the real America, we have no agenda, and we're just going to have music and fun, you have to think about what that means and what they're saying before you can believe that statement. And that echoes, that's true on so many levels in so many ways right now, coming from the regime, since there are many, 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 many lies. And I've said before, lies is one of those words I'm sensitive to. As a person who studies the 18th century, the two words you never wanted to call someone if you were a guy and you're talking to another guy, coward and liar, are the things that if you call someone that, you're going to be challenged to a duel. The two worst things you can say about someone. So, I understood why for a long time no one wanted to use the L word when talking about Donald Trump. I get it. They thought, ooh, and it implies motive. So yeah, it implies it's deliberate. It's deliberate. Okay. I mean, I'm sorry. It's not like, oops, I said something wrong. Silly me. I know that the truth is different. As I said, they're creating a narrative. They're telling lies. They tell them all the time because they assume there's going to be no accountability, because so often there isn't any accountability. And they assume that a certain number of people are just going to swallow the rhetoric. They said, which is why I'm here tonight saying, don't be those people. Whoever you are, for whatever reason you're watching this, if you're hate watching me, or if you're watching me because you agree with me, either way, do not listen to the rhetoric without thinking. Think about it and think about reality. Think about what's actually out in the world, what you're actually seeing versus the rhetoric. It's easy to get emotionally caught up in your response to the rhetoric and to let your emotion carry you away before you've actually evaluated the reality factor. And I understand that entirely, right? I when I come on here at the end of the day, and I as ever, I am about to go to sleep. And when I decide what I'm going to talk about, typically it's something that has made me emotional during the day. And what I love about these moments is that I get to work through those emotions, and I get to do that with you, to give words to whatever it is that is irritating me or bemusing me or whatever it is. So that to me is the big lesson here. You couldn't. It's almost as though if you asked the Fates to stage 2 shows, 2 performances that represented this moment in time and what they stand for, and their mood and their ethic and their inclusive or exclusiveness, if you were trying to capture that, like you actually in a movie, it would think that it's too obvious. You wouldn't, if the script writer who said, let's do a halftime show where it's in Spanish and it's all about joy and this is America and it's this great inclusive message. And then the other people are, this is America. That's not America. And we have no agenda. Yay, Charlie Kirk. It's as though the script writers would be too obvious in making it that plain, the moment that we're in and the ways in which people can't communicate, aren't communicating, and can't even see each other speaking the same language at this point. A long way of saying, take from the Super Bowl in addition, and I would have to think hard to know who was playing Super Bowl. I know Seattle was in there because my family is in Seattle, and it registered on me that Seattle was there. I don't even know what the other team was. that's the degree to which I'm not part of the Super Bowl. But regardless of what team you're rooting for, regardless of whatever, and this should hold true for left and right, don't just buy the rhetoric. And particularly, I have to say, on the right, because they deliberately lie all the time, constantly. They do it on purpose. They do it because they can get away with it. They do it because there's no accountability. Donald Trump does it because the fact that he gets away with it makes him feel like and makes others feel like, look at him. He's a powerful guy. He can lie. He can do whatever he wants, and he gets away with it. That's a leader, right? There are all kinds of reasons why the lies are flying around. Just be strong. I'm going to get to my other strong statement at the end. Be strong. Take a couple of breaths and think about what's really going on before you get swept up in rage harvesting or, fantasy lying or whatever it is that's flying at you. That's what struck me today in watching the performance. It was so joyful, and this isn't a moment where there are a lot of joyful things floating around. And I know, I think, I don't know if I said it here with us, with this we, but joy and inclusiveness, empathy is resistance in this climate. It truly is, because that's about humanness and humanity and reaching out for other people and including other people. All of those things, which should be unquestionably good things, in this climate, they're scorned by some people. And having all those things is a form of resistance, particularly when we are sort of awash in a sea of cruelty and scorn floating all over the place around us. So that was another thing that I thought that halftime show represented, was just joy and love of one's culture. So anyway, that's my message for tonight. It's the sort of reality factor versus the rhetoric, and the dueling halftime shows and what they really tell you about the people who were framing and performing the halftime shows. What a world. And I'm trying to catch up. So yeah, right. Bad Bunny's roll call of all of these Latin American countries with the flags. So yeah, I'm trying to catch up. Keep shining, everybody. And some of you probably were at halftime Super Bowl parties. Like I said, I don't think I've ever been to one before. I'm so not sportsy. At any rate, I am glad that you are here. I am glad as ever that we are a we meeting here this evening. I am, and the Super Bowl is sort of this ultra American thing, right? The Super Bowl, it's like, apple pie, baseball, the Super Bowl. These are supposed to be these prime American moments. And even now, even with that, couldn't be that kind of moment this year. So at any rate, thank you guys for coming here. Cannot finish without doing what I must do. I have no idea what I'll be talking about tomorrow, but and maybe tomorrow or the next day, I'll be back very soon with some new thing that I didn't expect to talk about. But the fact of the matter is, Bad Bunny said, we're a pretty freaking big we, a big inclusive we. That matters. And community matters because you guys are all here. We're, on our way to 1,400 people again tonight. You're all here. And you're all here because you want to be part of this we. And that matters. So I love you folks. I love you for being here. I love what that represents. I know I say this every time I'm on here, but that's because I mean it. I love the fact that, to me, the fact that all of these people show up at 11 o'clock at night for me to talk about whatever at a random time, because it's not even at a set time, and some nights I skip it. The fact that people are here and engaging in this with each other, that's hope right there. That's humanness, that's inclusiveness, that's hope and community. So I want to thank you all for being here. As ever, I wish everyone their own big can full of chutzpah, very much needed. I wish everyone to think about their neighbors and their neighborhood and be there for them. And I want everyone to be strong and of good courage. I had brunch with friends today, and they were very good friends with my friend Richard Bernstein, who used to say that with me all the time. And apparently they didn't say that all the time to them. So I even gave it to them today at brunch. Be strong and of good courage. You can do it. I will see you soon. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having the hope to come here and engage in this conversation. And I will see you soon with some other random thing to talk about at 10:45 at night. Okay, everybody. See you soon. Sleep well. Bye, folks.